Dickie's Barbecue Pit's origin story sounds like the American dream. Texas-style barbecue, a family focus, and promises of easy profit. But beyond the smoke and spice lay something sinister. 37 franchisees told the New York Times they were enticed with misleading financial information, lured into debt before a single brisket hit the grill. Veterans, immigrants, and hopeful entrepreneurs invested life savings only to find Dickie's had routinely sold franchises to people who had no restaurant experience and lacked the funds to weather losses. Their barbecue dreams were burned by broken promises, and now their hopes have gone up in flames. Lawsuits followed as franchisees accused Dickie's of burning dreams and bank accounts. They say hefty fees and mandates prevented them from earning a profit. One franchisee filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy, writing that Dickie's had imposed extreme and unreasonable financial demands on his business. Promised $900,000, sales never materialized. One complaint sums up the plight. None of these franchises generated revenues consistent with the representations made. The slide from golden opportunity to corporate betrayal is complete, and this is only the beginning of the story. Investigative narration reveals how a humble Texas barbecue joint became the world's largest barbecue franchise and then nearly imploded. We track Dickie's Barbecue Pit from its 1941 origins, through breakneck expansion and internal scandals, to the bitter lawsuits and closures of today. The story unfolds in 5 acts: a Midwestern family, story turned empire, early warning signs, tightening corporate control, a collapse of trust, and finally the brand's rocky present and lessons learned. It began in 1941 with a lone smoker. World War I veteran Travis Dickie opened a modest barbecue pit north of downtown Dallas, Texas, a small, family-run smokehouse built on charm and authentic smoked meats. Travis tended the pit while his wife Ollie served sandwiches. Together, they built a neighborhood gathering spot, famous for slow-cooked beef brisket and pit hams. By the late 1960s, Travis's sons, Roland and T.D. Dickie, had taken over. Under their leadership, the little BBQ joint became a Texas barbecue institution, expanding throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth area, with loyal fans flocking for Dickie's mouth-watering meats and famous Big Yellow Cups. In 1994, the Dickie family took their decades of local success national, launching a franchise program to spread the taste of Texas. The gamble paid off. Brisket aficionados across the country flocked to the brand's slow-smoked barbecue. By the 2000s, Dickie's Barbecue Pit was no longer a local legend, but a fast-growing chain. The company's own marketing boasted that by the 2010s, Dickie's had grown to hundreds of restaurants in 44 states under multiple concepts, from BBQ to burger and wings spin-offs. Industry press noted that Dickie's, the largest barbecue brand in the world, was a Dallas-born family operation with a rapidly growing empire. The growth was staggering. Internal reports showed Dickie's franchise sales soared after the Great Recession, pushing unit count ever higher. One food magazine noted the chain peaked at 564 locations in 2017, making it the dominant barbecue chain nationwide. By that point, thousands of new Dickie's outlets had opened from California to Florida. For the Dickie family, it seemed the American dream had come true. What started as a one-man smoker in 1941 had become a national restaurant empire, celebrated for Texas-style hospitality and Hollywood smoke barbecue. Yet beneath the glossy success, not everything was smooth. As Act 2 will show, the very boom that made Dickie's famous would also seed trouble. Behind the scenes of Dickie's franchise frenzy, experienced observers and early owners began to sound alarms. From the mid-2010s, unusual franchise practices and onerous rules started to emerge as concerns. Former and current franchisees quietly told regulators that Dickie's brand required costly fees and vendor contracts that left little profit. In fact, franchisees began filing complaints with the Federal Trade Commission, accusing Dickie's of imposing corporate rules that prevented them from earning a profit. Among these complaints were allegations of hidden fees, overpriced supplies from affiliated vendors, and demands to buy equipment at inflated cost. An FTC report later noted Dickie's Barbecue Pit was one of the top franchisors mentioned in complaints about deceptive fees and supplier kickbacks. One anonymous franchisee in an FTC survey gave a blunt assessment. Dickie's will tell franchisees the costs will be $400,000, and it will cost sometimes double that. Then the owner will default on their Small Business Administration loan until the restaurant is sold for about 10% of the original cost. In short, critics claimed Dickie's was overcharging franchisees and reselling failed stores, a practice called churning, leaving many new owners underwater. Other early warning signs cropped up. In 2014, a small legal skirmish made the rounds. Dickie's sued one former franchisee in Colorado for contract breach. And by the late 2010s, media outlets began picking up on trouble. Industry news reported unusual churn in unit count and higher than normal closures. For example, a trade article noted dozens of Dickie's outlets had quietly shut or changed hands, and insiders complained that unit volumes were dropping despite expansion. Meanwhile, Dickie's also launched several virtual and non-barbecue concepts, like Wing Boss Wings and Trailer Birds Fried Chicken, in an attempt to diversify. But some franchisees said these digital spin-offs distracted from core operations and added complexity. Even before lawsuits, individual franchise owners were already feeling pinched. One Florida operator later recounted that Dickie's sales representatives had presented an optimistic budget, projecting startup costs around $250,000, only for her own build-out to come in far higher. She ended up racking up over $1 million in debt, eventually declaring bankruptcy in 2023. Such stories echoed across small venues and online. On franchise investor boards, Dickie's began to feature in cautionary tales. In private Facebook groups, prospective owners compared notes. Yes, the brisket smelled heavenly, but the fine print had become almost forbidding. In summary, by the early 2020s, a pattern was emerging. The model that had made Dickie's grow so fast was also generating disparity and discontent. Franchisees felt misled by promised earnings and hamstrung by corporate mandates. This set the stage for Act 3, where those grievances would come to a head in courts and in the media. As the cracks widened, anger and lawsuits went public. In 2024, a series of legal actions painted a picture of a franchise system under severe strain. One high-profile example came in September. Smokin' Dutchman Holdings, a Michigan-based operator with 4 Dickie's units, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The company's CEO, Craig Fox, declared that extreme and unreasonable financial demands by Dickie's had driven him to the brink. According to the bankruptcy filing, Dickie's corporate imposed hefty requirements, from mandatory remodeling to expensive vendor purchases, that his stores simply couldn't meet. The franchisor's response, from Senior VP Jeff Gruber, was to deny any wrongdoing and say they had provided extra support. But the damage was done. By late 2024, even top franchise operators were collapsing, citing Dickie's policies as the culprit. Legal battles were not limited to bankruptcies. In October 2024, a group of franchisees in Ohio and Idaho publicly sued Dickie's and a lender for fraud. They alleged the chain had enticed them with inflated projections and misleading cost estimates in 2022. In the complaint, the plaintiffs explained that Dickie's reps told them startup costs would be around $324,000 and promised $900,000 in first-year sales. But in reality, their construction ended up costing $800,000 to $1 million per store, and sales never came close to those rosy figures. The plaintiffs pointed out that one pro forma break-even timeline, about 4 years and 3 months to recoup investment, was absurdly identical for both an Ohio mall store and an Idaho highway store. Despite huge differences in rent and labor, they accused Dickie's of grossly inflated pro forma statements and contracts designed to push them into debt. The lawsuit is still working through arbitration, but it underscored how franchisees had lost trust in the brand's promises. By mid-2025, even mainstream media had caught wind of the storm. An explosive New York Times investigation, picked up by the Dallas Morning News and Houston Chronicle, interviewed dozens of frustrated former Dickie's owners. These operators described being hoodwinked by the Dallas-based parent company. They told reporters they were sold franchises based on misleading forecasts, then pressured to keep unprofitable locations open. One owner said corporate staff even harassed him for speaking out. Meanwhile, Dickie's CEO Laura Rhea Dickie, the great-granddaughter of Travis, still at the helm, went on record defending the model, calling the legal attacks a fringe group of failed franchisees that did not represent the majority. She claimed most franchise owners were doing fine and that Dickie's had a winning recipe. Behind the scenes, the company launched a counteroffensive. In June 2025, a Dickie's spokeswoman published a public letter decrying a calculated smear campaign by a legal firm representing ex-franchisees. The letter accused that firm of unethical tactics, including threatening former Dickie's executives to turn on the company. That feisty response only fueled the drama. Now the fight had gone beyond federal courts into the realm of racketeering allegations. Regardless of spin, the message was clear. The feud had become a full-blown war between the franchisor and its critics. Meanwhile, the numbers told a grim story. Dickie's own financial disclosure revealed that in fiscal 2024, the chain lost 83 net units. Nearly half of all locations had either closed or been sold to new owners over the previous year. Virtually every outlet for growth was drying up. It was as if the empire, built so fast, was rapidly deflating. The corporate executives quietly halted expansion of many new concepts, even pausing growth of their virtual chicken and wing brands, while publicly promising to strengthen our core and clean house of underperforming outlets. By late 2025, quiet discontent had erupted into a full collapse of trust in Dickie's BBQ. The franchise had become a textbook case of overreach, with 20% shrinkage of its footprint in 2024 and abrupt closures leaving communities puzzled. Public opinion soured as review sites filled with complaints about broken promises and sudden shutdowns. Food writers compared the saga to a crime story, a beloved brand destroyed by its own success. The Chronicle noted that the NYT exposé had grilled the company over assertions of being convinced to purchase locations based on misleading financial information. Franchisees felt betrayed. Industry experts now cited Dickie's as a cautionary tale, warning conference attendees to be careful what you sign up for. The FTC's mid-2024 guidance, banning hidden fees and gag clauses, explicitly referenced examples like Dickie's in its crackdown on unfair franchise practices. The root cause was overexpansion and neglect. By rushing hundreds of locations into untested markets, Dickie's grew too big too soon, sacrificing adequate support and honest communication. The fallout left debt-ridden franchise owners, lost savings, and a permanently tarnished company image. As 2025 draws to a close, Dickie's BBQ Pit is fighting to rebuild after months of turmoil. The family-owned chain is shoring up its core brand and promises, emphasizing renewed focus on helping existing owners. Corporate pledge to assist franchisees with remodel costs, fund marketing cooperatives, and reimburse a percentage of sales when business improves. Growth has slowed dramatically, just 4 new restaurants planned for the fiscal year ahead versus aggressive past expansion. Virtual kitchens and non-barbecue brands have been shelved for menu promotions aimed at stabilizing the flagship product. Industry analysts remain skeptical about whether these steps can repair the damage. Franchise investor trust has been deeply shaken. Dickie's has revamped its franchise disclosure document and promised more transparency and oversight. While loyal customers still love the brisket, many are now aware of the corporate saga, leaving the brand's image at a crossroads. The lessons are stark. Entrepreneurs see Dickie's as a warning about unchecked growth and misaligned incentives. Owners invested $400,000 only to discover true costs might be double that, while the franchisor collected fees even as stores failed. For Dickie's, the challenge is reconciling a high-risk franchise model with ethical practices. The chain remains large but precarious, with roughly 300-plus locations, down from 500-plus previously. Recovery plans include new capital investments and modest remodels. Observers believe Dickie's may survive, but smaller and more cautious. The brand that once called itself Barbecue Lover's Paradise must now prove it listens to operators and lives up to Texas integrity standards. The saga of Dickie's BBQ Pit has been a slow-burning drama, but it's far from the last word in restaurant scandals. In the end, Dickie's story is a reminder that even America's favorite barbecue brand can face its darkest hour. One thing is certain: in the cutthroat world of franchising, there are no guaranteed recipes, only hard lessons. As one frustrated former owner put it, the true cost of that Texas barbecue dream was far higher than anyone originally knew.